Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel. And thank you for joining this radio, audio, no pictures. Listen to this essay in your car as you're driving along live stream. Now, in this essay, I'd like to talk about the very fluid and very one-sided moral position encouraged by the globalists and funded and supported by the globalists and their vast network of NGO activist groups. But this was a meeting or gathering. I'm not sure what you'd call it. Equivalent of a large town hall, I suppose. There's about 1,000 people in an auditorium, and there's a panel there to ostensibly, at least, discuss the West's attitudes to Islamic mass migration. I think I could sort of safely put it in that category, and the position. I guess there are two positions that the panel, and it's very activist NGO, activist moderator, who whilst being Arabic was educated in the West. The attitude was that brown people, particularly Islamic brown people, should be able to go to the West, the rich white Christian West, whenever and wherever they want to, and at any time of their choosing, and any sort of restriction, limitation, any sort of processes to authenticate who they are, where they're from, the legitimacy of their their claims to be refugees and things like that. Anything like that is just absolute, racism, bigotry, white people, evil white people, racist, bigot white people. And any sort of restriction or questioning of these Islamic would-be migrants or refugees, any sort of questioning at all is the language of Hitler. So they begin from those 2 points. The absolute entitlement and any restriction is unacceptable. So from that beginning point, I don't know why any white guy would go into this, but one of the sort of ironies, I thought it was rather funny in a way. You've got a room full of 1,000. This is in a Middle Eastern country, by the way, but you've got a room of or an auditorium of I would suggest more than 1,000, brown, dark brown to very dark brown people. Most, not all, Islamic from the look as the camera panned, and I don't know, 3/4 men, 1/4 women, and they're there. So there's only one white guy out of over 1,000 people. There's a panel that's made up of black people, black and brown people, and this one white guy, and they're all lecturing him about what a lack of diversity and bigotry and racism, and he's the only white guy in the fucking, and yet they don't seem to see that it's an irony upon ironies. But anyway, I wanted to focus on a couple of things, and I'll come back to the makeup of the audience. But looking at the panel, how they use manufactured people, manufactured activists to push the globalist agenda. Now, the manufacturing of these activists and the legitimizing of these talking head activists has been going on for some years. Now here's one of the guys, and I've made some notes here, so I'm just going to refer to that. So here's a guy who's he's African American, and he was a street kid living on the mean streets of a big city in the United States. And so he's 15 years old, and somehow he's discovered by the globalist talent scouts as someone they can use. He's the future propagandist. They've decided this when he's 15. I'm sure they decide on quite a few. Not all of them make it, but this one. So he's a street kid living on the main streets. Suddenly, he becomes an A grade student. That is right across the board, an A grade student, like bang, just like that. So clearly that was fixed. The fix was in. Now listen to him today. He's talking today. He's got the sophistication of a street kid. his reasoning and even the way he talks. He talks in black street talk, and he's not a bright guy, not by any stretch. But suddenly he's an A-grade student in junior and senior high school. That's obviously, again, the fix was in on that. Then he gets selected, and this is going back some years now. He gets selected into an Ivy League college that hitherto had very high standards of, it was pass or fail, and there's no way this guy could have got into a college of that stature. And so somehow he makes it into an Ivy League college. Again, the fix was in. This just shows the power that these globalists have had and for how long they've had it. This is collusion with teachers' unions, university administrators. There's a lot of collusion that goes into getting a low IQ street kid and giving him straight A grades than Ivy League colleges. So a lot of collusion by a lot of people in a lot of different places. So we can already see how vast the apparatus of the globalist fixing, rigging, backroom rigging was, even 25 years ago. So while at college, he's like the professional uni student, but he gets 2 sociology degrees and a PhD and gets scholarships for these. So somehow all this is covered. Now given the university, he dropped out of the Ivy League university because, in his own words, he was still really a street kid at heart. So they probably were umming and ahhing about giving up on him at this point, the globalist manufacturing machine. But they, for some reason, stayed with it. He got 2 sociology. This is at a normal state university, 2 sociology degrees, and then they gifted him a PhD. Now, clearly, he got none of those. So again, the fix was in. So they gave him that. So he's 8 or 9 years at university. Now, during that time, he's groomed and educated in activism by the NGOs, and he's given, it was an NGO. His job is to gin up the black inner city population and so on. Now, as soon as he gets the PhD, the second he steps out of the university campus with his newly minted PhD, he's hit with a number of book publishing deals. Now he's had, was it 12, 13, 14 books published, and he's got generous advances in all of those, even though none of them have sold. They've been quite heavily promoted. All the universities and high schools buy them and so on. But so he's been given very generous advances. All of them, in every case, the publishing company would have lost handsomely on it. So they're obviously being compensated through the back room and other ways. Then and on top of all that very undeserved publishing deals he got. Then he's immediately given jobs as news anchors or co-news anchor at the leftist media outlets, MSNBC and so on, The Guardian. He also gets to write articles. Now, if you listen to the way he talks, there's no way he wrote those articles, so I don't know who's writing them, but listen to the way he talks, he's just not writing them. But he gets numerous articles. Now, he's not, the journalists who are paid, as in the journalists who can bring serious eyeballs to the column or the newspaper or the whatever it is, the online newspaper. Journalists are paid a certain amount of money per word. This guy's paid premium rates for everything he writes. Beyond premium. He's being thousands upon thousands of dollars for every time he supposedly puts pen to paper. I don't believe he's writing it, but now, he was even back in, when they first gave him these co-news anchor or current affairs show anchors, like commentary type anchors. He was already, pushing mass migration quite hard, and anyone who disagreed with it or questioned it was Hitler. So now he's one of many talking heads around have all been manufactured. There's nothing natural or organic about these people. They've been specifically selected and manufactured to push propaganda. That is the sole purpose. And by the way, being handsomely rewarded for it. He has a real waterfront mansion jet set lifestyle, and it's not being paid for as a result of any talent or gifts that he has. I mean, I doubt his IQ is much above 90. So anyway, he's in there talking about or pushing this idea. Now, he's got his talking points, so he hasn't got the mental capacity to deal with any sort of nuance. So whatever anyone else says or what the white guy says or anything like that, he just sticks to his globalist talking points. Anyone who disagrees is Hitler! And he just keeps on going down that path and just denying and creating straw man. So if someone talks about, the amount of terrorists, bomb setting off terrorists that have come into Europe and the Islamic migration, then he's, so what you're saying is everybody's a terrorist because is that what you're saying? And he just does this ridiculous straw man stuff. But anyway, coming back now to this auditorium with all these brown people in it. Now we have to understand, and people need to get their heads around this because it's vitally important. There's close to 2 billion with a B, close to 2 billion people in the Indian subcontinent. That's Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, all that sort of stuff. Now, of those 2 billion, 3/4 plus, easily 3/4 plus, so over 1 billion people all want to come to the West. All of them want to come to the West. And I've come across a number of Indians who say, look, from the time I was a little kid, I always dreamed I'd come to the West. And so they have this sense of absolute entitlement that they must be and should be. It's my dream, and I should be allowed to come to only the rich white West. They don't want to go to the poor white countries, only the rich countries. So they want to come to the West, and they expect to be given everything. They expect to be given a job, and not some shit job cleaning the toilets, but a good job. And they expect this, they expect that, they expect the next thing. Any sort of questioning of them or any sort of vetting or anything where they have to meet a standard of literacy or education or qualifications or anything like that is seen as an absolute outrage. And they all perceive themselves to be spiritually and culturally and morally superior to white Western people, or to other people generally, but in this instance, white Western people. They think less of black people even than supposed racist whites do. So they have this absolute all-consuming entitlement that they should be able to come to the West. And the second level or tier of that entitlement is that they should be given handouts. They're entitled to be given good jobs, prestigious jobs, well-paid jobs, and they love working for government. So there's zero accountability and jobs for life and all this sort of stuff. So they start from this position and these two positions. Now I've spoken to Indians and Pakistanis, by the way, that where they were questioned and their credentials, as in were their university degrees genuine, or did they have university degrees? What job experience did they have? And they're outraged at this. I mean, it's beyond outrage. I mean, they're all shaking with rage that anyone would dare question them, and also very class conscious because one of I can't remember if it was Indian or Pakistani now. There's this woman who was almost rolling on the floor with rage that she'd been questioned by, because the Australian immigration person who was questioning was Indian and she was Pakistani, or was a low class Indian and she was a high class Indian, that sort of thing, and was actually shaken with rage. It's not right. They have no right to question me. They have no right to. Now, this is something that I found when the company, when Indians first started arriving in Australia, and these were supposedly the best educated Indians, the ones with the PhDs. My experience was that these PhDs were meaningless. They were just rich Brahmins who'd bribed the university because it's a prestigious thing to have. I went to university and got a PhD, and any Brahmin or upper class Indian wants to be able to swan around, his proof, that I'm upper class. Look, I've got a PhD and I've got book publishing deals. So, and really all of it is fake. It's all a fantasy. They haven't studied hard at university or met any standard of excellence or anything like that. They just slung a few $1,000 to to the university administrator, and hey presto, out comes the PhD. So it's a and most of the upper class Indians, it's the university is a social club where you meet your future wife and husband. That's all it is. It's not a place to get a fucking education. There are claims that that's changed, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. So I found when these people would front, and I was under pressure from the board of directors to hire, hey, all these brilliantly clever Indians are coming into the country, and they don't want as much money as top flight, say, computer programmers do, white computer programmers. So why don't we hire some of them, save ourselves some money, and we get some top flight PhDs in the process? Now, I remember voicing at the time that I doubted these credentials were, I knew what a corrupt country India was and how everything was done through bribery, and Pakistan and Bangladesh as well. So I didn't think a whole lot of, I wasn't sure, but I doubted that the PhDs either A, were real, or B, that they were to any rigorous level of educational standards. So, no, Billy Bob, don't be silly. Oh, but he hires me. So I did, again, really just to shut them up and get them out of my face. But the board of directors, this is. So I started hiring these Indians. As I've mentioned in other videos, I started hiring some of these Indians, and the bottom line came that this is computer programmers, in this case, coders. They couldn't cut a line of code to save their lives. I'm not even sure they knew how to switch a computer on, some of them. But so I got down to the point where, but they took the position as I'd start to close in on them and say, well, hey, how much code have you cut today? Type question. And they would bluster and fuss and, oh, I'm busy, and oh, I'm such an important person. Oh, I'm a member of the social elite. So you can't bother me with pesky questions about doing work because I'm thinking bigger Socratic philosophical things. And so I'd sort of, okay, all right then, and I'd point out to them that they still had to, they were getting paid. They still had to do work. Now, Indian elites see it differently. Their jobs are not, positions they hold aren't jobs at work. They're not meant to be productive. They're positions of social status, not where you have to produce something or create something or deliver productive outcomes. They're purely social status, symbolic jobs, if you will, and just again to reflect their social status in Indian society. And they really don't have much of a concept of working for a living, and they can't understand that, and they think it's rather crude, if not vulgar, to think that way. They're the social elite. Are you telling me I have to do work? You silly little man. So so I'd start to close in again, say, look, no, you really need to do the work. And then it would start to come out under the pressure. They would say, look, you're not of a high enough social status to question me. You're not allowed to question me. You're not of a high enough social status. I need someone of higher social status. And if someone of higher social status was questioning me, then they wouldn't question me because they would know that it's a symbolic job, not a real job. And I'm only here because I'm so important and social elite membership club and that sort of stuff. So that sort of surprised me. I thought, well, gee, why would you come? You're in another country now. This is not India. This is not some elite Brahmin social club. You're actually got a job and you're being paid in an economy where you have to produce something, in a work environment where you have to actually do the job you're supposed to do. And they couldn't understand it. I'm just thinking of one guy. He would pile up papers high on his desk, and he would instead of directly answering my question of what have you done today type thing, he'd go, look at all this work I have. Look at it all, and he'd point to the paper and the pile of paper. Look at all this work. And so what work is it? Well, can I have a look at that? No. And then he put his hand on top of the pile of paper so I couldn't get so he got to the point where I had to say, listen, you have to cut a line of code in front of me right now, otherwise I'm going to have to ask you to move on. And then the bluster and the carrying the arms going and the the righteous Indian, no, you have to cut a line of code right now. You can even choose the program. You can even choose the computer language. You can choose, but you have to cut a line of code right now, in front of me while I'm watching. And then it would dawn on them that the jig was up. And then they would confess that, well, actually, I don't know how to cut any code. I've never cut any code and I don't know how, but you shouldn't fire me. You should keep me on because I'm such a socially prestigious sort of, no, buddy, Deepak, you're going to have to go. And just out of academic interest, I was, well, why did you tell so many lies? I mean, there is no PhD. You don't even have the computer program degree. You can't you've never cut a lie. Well, why did you present yourself otherwise? And he was quite calm. Well, I don't know. I just, due to my social status, I'm not used to being questioned. No one expects me to do any work. No one expects me to know what, everything I've got is a reflection of my class, my elite class social status. And I just thought that in Australia, you would be so appreciative that you got such a high class patrician Brahmin that you just wouldn't, that was all you really wanted, because that's how it is in India. So these are the attitudes, these are the overall attitudes of these people: entitlement at all levels, and entitlement for jobs. And then once they get the job, they're entitled not to do any work, and so on. So these are the people that are screaming, all white folks are racist, and all white folks are evil, and white folks are bigoted, and this sort of thing. Now it got specifically to the issue of terrorism. So the white guy was saying, well, given in mass immigration, and given there is no vetting of the people coming in, or hardly any vetting, then it's easy for terrorists to slip through, or people who are more likely to slip through. Whereas if you get urban people who have actually done productive jobs, they actually got qualifications, if you get those urban productive people, then they're much more likely to fit in. They're much more likely to have a very middle view rather than a particularly devout view on Islam, and they're more likely to integrate. And you don't find any bombers or terrorists among those sort of people. Well, actually, you do, but just not very many. And the more devout and the more activist someone is in the Islamic cause, the more likely they'll be converted to some sort of radicalism. Okay, well, that's a statement of the obvious. But this idea that being vetted and being sort of examined and having your details poured over by non-believers is itself unthinkable. It's almost a contaminant. I remember I was in doing business in one Islamic country years ago, and they wouldn't shake my hand, or the taxi drivers wouldn't take money, as in paying the taxi driver or anything. They would stop, shake hand. They would stop. They would put on a special glove before they would shake my hand, or a special glove before they could take the money from me, because as a non-believer, I was contaminated, and yet they would say white people are the racist. But any sort of vetting is considered to be in itself an act of bigoted, evil, fascist, Nazi, Hitler racism, and so on, because therefore their argument is that, well, you must assume that everybody is a terrorist, as in bomb sort of making or bomb letting off terrorists. Therefore, it's bigotry because you're examining everybody in case there might be a terrorist in there. Now, if you reduce migration to skilled migration, something that they're terrified of, by the way, these black brown people. If you reduce migration to skilled migration, then automatically you're filtering out the 99.99% of the potential terrorists. But the globalists don't want, and these people certainly don't want activism. Don't want any sort of restriction to skilled migration. Now, some insist that they're one of the brown journalists on the panel, whose folks were supposedly refugees. But again, she was created in the back. The globalists spotted her, the talent scouts spotted her, and even though she was a nobody and a below average student, they moved her through the whole system, paid for her university, radicalized her through the NGOs and so on. And now she's a radical activist, insisting that she got everything by merit and she wouldn't have had that if, and in spite of all the evil people trying to hold her back, she still managed to get gifted all these degrees and book deals and jobs and so on. Jobs that, by the way, no one could have got on merit. They're being given purely on the basis she's an activist. So just on this thing, we need to understand that in all these third world countries, there are billions of people that want to come to the rich white West. You know, they're simple people, peasant people, low IQ people, no skills people, no education people, no intention of integrating people. They all want to come to the West and think that any restriction of any sort is an outrageous act of racism. Now, you try and sort of explain that, okay, well, all right, you want 1 billion, 2 billion plus people to move to the West. Well, that means that they're going to outnumber all the people in the West by 2 to 1. You want all the affirmative action. You want all the quotas and race and gender and this and that and quotas. You want all your religious rituals all installed and instilled everywhere. Then the West won't be rich anymore. Far from it. Why can't you see that? But they see it from a slightly different. Say, well, look at all the buildings, look at all the roads you've got, look at everything. How can that wealth disappear? And we should be able to have it. Well, it will. It'll fall into disrepair and ultimately disappear, like the ubiquitous potholes in the road. But you're not talking to people with that level of sophistication. Nor, by the way, the globalists. The globalists want the mass migration, and they want it to continue, and they want to ramp it up. And so these folks are just useful idiots that are falling in line with it. You've been a Tassus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.